Hi, I'm just another ghost, and in today's video I'm going to be going through the first 8 days of Inktober this year. I've decided to follow Fawn Lawn's creep along prompt list this year. I'm aware of the whole controversy around Jake Parker, but I've mainly decided to follow a different prompt list as I just prefer the prompts. If you want to know more about the whole situation, I know Ethan Becker did a really good video on it. The first prompt was omens, and initially I thought of doing some fan art for good omens, but ultimately decided that I wanted to steer away from doing fan art this year so that I could practice my character design some more. I was pretty stuck for a while until my sister recommended crows as an omen for death, so I ended up drawing this crow-inspired old man. I tried to use a more muted colour palette to make it look a bit creepier. I think it turned out pretty well. I struggled a bit with the shape of the head, as I'm not completely used to drawing old men, and went with something that looked a bit long and thin. I also tried to give him a bit of a hunched back so that he had less of a defined silhouette and to look a bit more mysterious. The colouring stage was where I had the most trouble, and I ended up using a colour palette I found online which had the same sort of vibe I was going for here. I wanted to try and reuse the same colours around his design so that there wasn't too much dark up at the top or the bottom, and to simplify his design slightly. Overall, I'd say he's probably one of the more creepier drawings I've done so far. For the third day, I wanted to make it into a pair with the fourth day, as the prompts were solar and lunar. I immediately thought of making them into gods and ended up making a couple of iterations for outfits for both designs that you can briefly see in the videos, but if you want to see them in more detail, they're also on my Instagram. For the solar god, I wanted to take inspiration from lions, which is why he has a big flowy beard and hair, and also thought that the sun is usually associated with fun and brightness, so I wanted to make him look very big and jolly, so I gave him a bit of a belly. Of course, the colours were simple, just lots of yellows and oranges. I did contemplate making the hair glow, but thought that it oversaturated it a bit and didn't look so good, so ended up getting rid of it. I also knew I wanted a cape in both designs, as I wanted to make the insides look like the sky and imagine that both would look a bit like the texture from Chowder and not move. I don't know if anyone remembers that cartoon. I think that the solar god is definitely my favourite of the two. Also, I apologise for the sound in the background, it's my dogs. Day 4 was lunar, and so I wanted this god to look almost the opposite to the solar god. I decided that he would look quite gaunt and stern, as the night can be cold and unforgiving, but also quite flowing and elegant, as the moon controls the tides and water. I struggled more with the outfit for this god than the other, as I wanted to try and keep it a similar sort of style, but also look quite different. I got quite a bit of help from my sister. This is my least favourite of the two, but I still think it turned out alright. Day 5 was Curse, and I thought of the Curse of the Werewolf. I had a pretty clear idea in my head of what I wanted this to look like, but had a lot of trouble trying to translate it into my style. You can see in the video that I struggled a lot with posing and head shape. I wanted her to look very strong and top heavy, as wolves usually have quite big heads and necks, and also struggled with deciding whether I wanted to make her look creepy or cute. In the end, I decided to go for a more humanoid figure than the animalistic legs I was trying to draw, and quite a simple pose. I was sort of running out of time for this one, so I went with a pose and body shape that was slightly more familiar to me. The colour palette was much easier, as I knew I wanted her to look either like a black wolf or a grey wolf, and found a couple of references for black wolves that I really liked. I also wasn't sure if she looked enough like a werewolf, so I made her clothes the stereotypical werewolf costume outfit, and so it came across a bit easier. In the end, although I had a lot of trouble with the design, I quite like how this one turned out. Day 6 was Demon, and I've just realised that in the finished piece I make a mistake for this one and write Day 5 on it. Sorry. My ideas for this prompt started as having like a child or 3 children around a summoning circle with a demon coming out from behind them, but like the other days I kind of ran out of time and ended up going for something much simpler. I just drew this simple demon girl who, as someone suggested, looks more witchy than anything in the end. I'd also hoped to make her look very creepy or Halloweeny, but she became much more tropical and summery when it came to designing the outfits and colour palette. I think because she ended up being so different to what I initially planned, she ended up being one of my least favourites. I don't hate it, but yeah, it's not the best. For day 7 I made the same mistake as day 6, so it says day 6 rather than day 7. For the prompt itself, the theme was guide, and I thought of something like the guide to the afterlife, like the boatsman from Hercules or Little Miss Fortune, but I didn't feel very inspired about it. My mum then recommended a girl guide. It wasn't very creepy, so I decided to turn her into a zombie girl guide because, you know, it's October. I found these really quite cute old girl guide uniforms on Google, which I drew her into, but made the colour palette more pink because I felt that it made the whole illustration slightly softer, and I feel like this style is slightly more cartoony than gruesome. I struggled a bit with the hand and bone placements and ended up struggling a bit with the skull showing, as I didn't really think it translated in the end. I also don't know that it makes so much sense that the skull still has hair coming from it, but it looked a bit odd without it. I quite like the end result for this one, apart from maybe that head section, and think that at some point maybe I'd like to redraw it and see if I can improve it at all. The last day that I'll show you is day 8. The prompt for that day was composite, and initially I really struggled coming up with any sort of ideas and had to turn to Google to find the definition. So after finding out what it was, I initially wanted to draw Frankenstein's monster, but had gotten really bored of drawing characters, so I decided to go with another background piece instead. This one was one of my favourites, as I'd had the least issues with posing and composition and colour for this piece. Yeah, I just decided to go for something simple, like a scarecrow. I looked a couple of images on Google and decided that I wanted a pumpkin head, as it would add a bit of a colour to the piece. For the first week, I think things have been a bit hectic, and most of the pieces ended up being drawn late at night with only about half an hour before midnight, so none of them were particularly complex, but I've really enjoyed the challenge of drawing every day so far. I'm hoping that I will do some more pieces this month, but I don't think I'll follow it so rigidly to draw every single day, but we'll have to see. I'm just coming to the end of this drawing now, so I'll wrap up by saying that I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to check out my last video, I'll leave a link at the end and down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.